Imagine the smoke still rising from your burning castle, the screams of your loyal guards fading into the night. Your crown, once a symbol of divine right, now lies shattered at your feet. And then the Vikings, brutal and fearless, drag you, the queen, the princess, into the Great Hall. What happened next, what they did to these defeated women, was a calculated act of cruelty. It was a punishment designed not just to break a person, but to shatter an entire kingdom. For these royal women, their fate at the hands of the Norse raiders was often far more terrifying than death itself. It was a darkness that history tried to bury, a story whispered only in the shadows. But tonight, we unearth it. What these Vikings did to defeated queens and princesses was a horror that echoed across generations, a chilling testament to their merciless conquest. And believe me, their capture was only the very beginning of their unimaginable ordeal. Have you ever felt truly powerless, watching everything you knew crumble around you? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because understanding power and its loss is key to these stories. And if you believe that history's darkest truths deserve to be told, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Join our quest to uncover the forgotten narratives of the past. The age of the Vikings, stretching roughly from the late 8th to the mid-11th century, was a time of unimaginable upheaval and terror across Europe. From the windswept shores of the British Isles to the vast plains bordering Byzantium, the sight of a longship on the horizon meant only one thing: fire, plunder, and the very real threat of a new, brutal kind of conquest. These were not just opportunistic raiders. The Vikings were skilled warriors, master navigators, and cunning strategists who reshaped the political landscape of an entire continent. They were driven by a complex mix of ambition, a hunger for land, wealth, and the sheer glory of battle, deeply rooted in their Norse culture. Their impact was so profound that their sagas still echo today, filled with tales of legendary warriors and epic journeys. But behind the celebrated sagas of glory and battle hides a darker truth, one history rarely speaks aloud, a narrative steeped in the darkness of human cruelty and the profound suffering of the defeated. For any kingdom, its queens and princesses were far more than just members of the royal family. They were living symbols of legitimacy, continuity, and the very soul of the realm. A queen represented the stability of the throne, the sanctity of the lineage, and often the spiritual heart of the people. A princess was a vessel for future alliances, a living treaty, and the hope of an unbroken line. Their dignity was the kingdom's dignity. Their honor was the kingdom's honor. To harm them, to humiliate them, was to strike at the very core of a nation's identity and its sense of power. This was a concept the Vikings understood with brutal clarity. For them, defeating warriors on the battlefield was only half the conquest. Breaking queens was the other, equally vital half. It was a way to crush the spirit of a people, to sow fear so deep it would last for generations. Consider the Byzantine Empire, a powerful Christian empire often considered the successor to Rome, whose borders and influence reached vast distances, sometimes even touching the edges where Norse raiders ventured. Even these sophisticated emperors and their elegant queens knew the terror of the northern raiders, though their encounters might have been with different groups than those attacking the smaller kingdoms of the West. The principle remained the same. Powerful women became targets, not just for their personal value, but for the profound message their capture sent to their entire world. The Vikings knew that while gold filled their coffers, The humiliation of a royal woman broke the will of a people. This was a psychological warfare tactic as old as Conquest itself, but the Norse brought a particularly brutal efficiency to it. Their actions ensured that the tales of what happened to defeated queens and princesses spread like wildfire, not as stories of courage, but as chilling warnings. It was a fate so terrible, so humiliating, that even to record it in full seemed to perpetuate the shame. The raids struck without warning, often appearing as if from nowhere. One day, the horizon was clear. The next, the dreaded dragon-headed longships sliced through the waves, carrying hundreds of hardened Viking warriors. The sound of a war horn, the frantic ringing of a church bell, the shouts of alarm, these were the last sounds of peace many ever heard. Castles, once thought impregnable, fell to the relentless Norse assault. Walls were breached, gates splintered, and the chaotic clash of steel and screams filled the air. In the smoke and confusion, royal families were often torn apart, separated in the brutal melee. Guards fought valiantly, but were overwhelmed. The king might fall in battle, or perhaps be dragged away for ransom, but the queens and princesses, often hidden away in inner chambers, could not escape their destined capture. Imagine the scene. The great hall of a castle, usually a place of feasts and music, now a smoky ruin. Flames still licked at the rafters, and the stench of blood and burning timber hung heavy. Through this devastation, a queen, perhaps still wearing fragments of her royal finery, would be dragged forward, her hands bound, her hair disheveled. Her crown, if she still possessed it, would be roughly torn from her head, perhaps even thrown to the ground and kicked aside. This act, small in itself, was a powerful message. Her power was gone. Her dignity was stripped away piece by piece. She was no longer a sovereign. She was a trophy, a prize of war, subjected to the harsh, unforgiving gaze of her captors. The transformation was instant and absolute, a descent into a darkness she could never have imagined. For the young princesses, their ordeal was often even more stark. They might be forced to walk before the triumphant warriors, paraded as living symbols of the vanquished kingdom. Their innocence, their youth, their royal blood, all became tools for the Vikings to demonstrate their absolute dominance. The implications of such a parade, the fear in their eyes, the whispers among the common folk who watched in horror, were understood by all. This public display was designed to inflict maximum psychological damage, not only on the women themselves, but on the entire populace. The capture was just the first step in a long, terrifying process, a profound moment of loss and vulnerability that marked the beginning of an entirely new and terrifying fate. Their lives, once filled with privilege and protection, were now subject to the whims of men who had no concept of mercy for their enemies. But captivity in the harsh world of the Norse was never the end of their suffering. In many ways, it was only the beginning. Once captured, the struggle for these royal women shifted from physical survival to a battle of wills, a fight for their very identity. Some queens, pragmatic and desperate to save their people or themselves, attempted negotiations. They would offer vast ransoms, promising gold, silver, and precious artifacts from their royal treasuries. They might appeal to the Vikings' sense of pragmatism, offering strategic alliances or even land in exchange for their freedom. These were often desperate pleas made under duress, attempting to leverage the last vestiges of their former power. They hoped that their royal status, which once afforded them protection, might now offer them a means of escape, a way to prevent an even more terrifying fate. But the Norse raiders were not always interested in simple ransoms. Sometimes the true value of a captive queen lay not in her wealth, but in her symbolic power. Other royal women, however, chose a different path. They resisted, even when all hope seemed lost. These were the queens who refused to bow, who maintained their defiance even in chains. They might organize last-ditch attempts at escape or simply refuse to cooperate, glaring at their captors with an unyielding pride. Their resistance, though often futile in a physical sense, was a powerful statement of their inner strength, a refusal to surrender their spirit. These women, even in their ultimate vulnerability, demonstrated a profound sense of survival. Their defiance, however, often came at a terrible cost, as captors exploited these royal figures to send fear throughout the remaining fragments of their kingdoms. A captured queen or princess became a pawn in a brutal game, her welfare used to extort compliance, to demand tribute, or to simply demoralize any lingering resistance. The message was clear. No one, not even royalty, was safe. The chronicles of the time, written by monks and scribes, often contain a telling silence about the full extent of these women's suffering. While battles and treaties were meticulously recorded, the humiliations endured by defeated queens and princesses were often omitted, deemed too shameful to commit to parchment. This silence, however, speaks volumes. It hints at acts so terrible, so deeply dishonoring, that history itself attempted to erase them. To dwell on the public degradation of a royal woman was to acknowledge the complete conquest of her people, to legitimize the Vikings' brutal power. So these stories became whispers, fragments, hints of a darkness that few dared to describe in detail. What they endured became something more terrifying than the battle itself, a prolonged torment designed to break not just the body, but the very soul. It was a fate that lingered, a shadow over generations. Among the most harrowing aspects of capture for these royal women were the rituals and terrors they faced in the heart of Norse territory, or even on the very ships that carried them away. Imagine being forced to attend a Viking victory feast. These were not polite gatherings. They were raucous, drunken celebrations of conquest, where the captured queens were often displayed before the warriors. They were no longer guests of honor, but objects of spectacle, stripped of their privacy and their former power. This public display, often involving uncomfortable proximity and menacing stares, was a deliberate act of psychological torture. The intent was clear: to reduce a once revered sovereign to a mere trophy, to humiliate her in front of the very men who had sacked her kingdom. The atmosphere was charged with a heavy darkness, a sense of vulnerability that would have been deeply unsettling, eroding any last shred of dignity. Adding to this torment were the pagan rituals, deeply ingrained in Norse culture. Many of these captured queens were devout Christians, raised in a world of churches, saints, and a singular, omnipotent God. To be forced to witness or even participate in rituals dedicated to Odin, Thor, or Freya, gods of a pantheon they considered heathen, was a profound spiritual violation. It was an attempt to strip them of their Christian identity, to sever their connection to their faith and their people. Imagine a queen accustomed to solemn masses and quiet prayer, now surrounded by frenzied warriors, performing rites that were alien and terrifying. The clash of faiths was not merely theological. It was a brutal assault on their deepest beliefs, designed to break their spirit and make them question everything they held sacred. This was a sophisticated form of ideological conquest, a battle for the very soul of the captive. These stories, often exaggerated through fear and retelling, spread as whispered warnings across villages and kingdoms. Tales of what the Vikings did to royal women became a powerful deterrent against resistance. They served as a chilling propaganda, reinforcing the brutal reputation of the Norse raiders. Mothers would tell their daughters, "Beware the longships, lest you suffer the fate of Queen Alara or Princess Ingrid." These were not just cautionary tales, they were accounts of profound terror that imprinted themselves on the collective consciousness. To break a queen was to conquer an empire in a way that swords and shields alone could not. It was to subjugate the very will of a people, to instill a fear so deep that it ensured long-term submission. And the Vikings, with their astute understanding of human psychology, knew this well. They wielded this specific form of darkness with ruthless efficiency, making sure the fear of such a fate echoed far beyond the actual act. Their power was not just in their weapons, but in their ability to shatter the very fabric of identity and hope. The ordeal of capture and humiliation often led to a crucial turning point for these royal women, though not always one of their choosing. For some, their noble lineage, which had initially made them targets, paradoxically presented a pathway, albeit a grim one, to a different kind of survival. They became pawns in political marriages, forced to wed a Viking jarl or chieftain. These alliances, orchestrated for pragmatic reasons by their captors, were a bitter form of conquest. A queen or princess, once destined for a powerful Christian monarch, might now find herself bound to a Norse lord, a man who represented everything she once feared. This was not a love match, it was a strategic move, designed to legitimize Viking claims to conquered lands or to forge new bonds between disparate groups. While such a marriage might ensure physical survival, it came at the immense cost of identity, culture, and often personal freedom. It was a form of betrayal, not only of their own lineage, but of their very faith and heritage. Their fate, though perhaps not outright death, was a life of quiet desperation, forced into a world entirely alien to their upbringing. Others were taken far from home, across vast seas, never to return to the lands of their birth. These women vanished into the mists of history, their names eventually forgotten by their people, their stories becoming mere whispers or tragic legends. They might have ended up in remote Norse settlements, assimilated into a new, often harsh culture. Their loss of identity was complete, their connection to their royal past severed. Their former power was utterly stripped away, replaced by the mundane, often grueling realities of a new life. This was a profound and permanent form of darkness, a silent disappearance that was arguably worse than death, as it meant the complete erasure of their former self and a total loss of belonging. Yet amidst this despair, there were rare defiant instances. A few queens and princesses, despite their unimaginable capture and suffering, found a way to resist, to maintain their spirit, and in doing so, became legends. Their defiance might not have changed their physical fate, but it preserved their inner integrity. These were the women who, even when forced into marriage, refused to abandon their Christian faith, quietly upholding their beliefs in a pagan land. Or perhaps they used their intellect and cunning to subtly influence their new households, carving out small pockets of power and influence. Their stories, though scarce, are powerful testaments to human resilience, shining like beacons in the darkest corners of history. They offer a stark contrast to the despair, demonstrating that even when everything is lost, the human spirit can still find a way to endure. But what happened when a queen refused to surrender? Not just her body, but her spirit, her very being. That was a different kind of fate, often worse than death itself, a truly terrifying consequence for challenging Norse authority. The fragmented narratives of these defeated queens and princesses persist in various historical records, scattered across different cultures and languages. Chronicles from Ireland, England, and even the distant Byzantine Empire hold fascinating, albeit often brief, fragments of these truths. Irish annals, for instance, sometimes mention the wives of local kings being carried off by Norse raiders, their names a shorthand for tragedy. English monastic records, written in the wake of devastating Viking assaults, might hint at the specific humiliations inflicted upon royal women as a testament to the savagery of the invaders. These historical documents, often terse and formal, rarely delve into the emotional darkness of these events, but their very Entian confirms the historical reality of such occurrences. Beyond these written records, oral sagas and local folk tales also speak of captive queens who, even if not named, haunted Viking halls. These were the ghost stories of their time, cautionary tales woven into the fabric of daily life. They served to remind people of the ever-present threat from the Norse and the dreadful fate that awaited those who were captured. These oral traditions often embellish the stories, focusing on the sheer terror and despair, ensuring that the memory of what happened lived on through generations. This was a different form of survival, not of the person, but of the memory of their suffering. The Turkish parallel, mentioned in the key points, offers another poignant perspective. Byzantine chronicles, written from the sophisticated heart of an empire often besieged by various northern raiders, including some who were culturally linked to the Norse, describe the brutality at their gates. While specific instances of Byzantine queens being captured by Vikings might be rare, the concept of powerful women being targeted by northern invaders for their symbolic power and as tools of conquest would have been well understood. These chronicles would have painted vivid, often horrifying, pictures of the fate of those who fell into the hands of these relentless warriors, serving as a reminder of the fragility of even the greatest empires. The stories of these queens, whether in the stark prose of a monk or the haunting verse of a saga, served as eternal warnings, carrying generational trauma across centuries. Their crowns might have been lost, their personal lives shattered, but their suffering became a profound and enduring testament to the relentless power and devastating darkness of Viking conquest. The memory, though painful, endured. So what then is true power? Is it the brute force of swords, the might of a conquering army, the ability to destroy and enslave? Or is it the enduring will to survive, the unwavering spirit that refuses to be completely broken, even when everything else is lost? Did these queens and princesses, stripped of their titles, their dignity, and their freedom, lose everything? Or did their defiance, their endurance, their very existence, however tragic, preserve a memory, a spark of resistance that echoed through time? Their fate was undeniably horrific, a testament to the ruthless nature of the Norse age. But in their silent suffering, in their desperate attempts at survival, they also etched a profound story into the annals of history. A story of unimaginable darkness, yes, but also a quiet testament to the resilience of the human spirit. What happened to captured queens and princesses was terrifying, a fate far worse than death for many. But this was nothing compared to what enslaved women endured on Viking ships, far from the light of any civilization. Their stories are even more heartbreaking, even more buried in the shadows of history. If you found this exploration into history's forgotten corners compelling, please remember to like this video. Your support helps us bring these vital, often unsettling, truths to light. And to make sure you don't miss the next descent into history's shadows, where we uncover the truly devastating fate of enslaved women, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Join our community as we continue to shine a light on the darkness of the past, ensuring these stories are never forgotten.